All right, so here is the lecture from week 4 that we are finishing online. So in this lecture, what I want you guys to think about is how behavioral economics, post-Keynesian economics, and new classical economics compare with one another, okay? So we are focusing here on consumer theory, and remember, from a new classical perspective, we have the idea that consumers are rational, that is, and behind the indifference curve, the two principles of completeness and transitivity, okay, that implies rationality. Then we have also the non-satiation proposition that more is always better than less. And finally, we have the idea that there is a diminishing marginal rate of substitution. This means that the consumers will have a continuous function for their preferences of two goods, right? So they can continuously compare different quantities of two goods. Okay, so that's the 4 assumptions behind the indifference curve. And then for the consumer theory to be completed, we also have the budget line, which has 2 assumptions. One is that the consumers spend the entirety of their income, nothing more, nothing less, and that prices are known and given. So prices are known imply that the consumers have full information, and prices are given means that we are in a world of perfect information, or sorry, perfect competition, where consumers cannot impact price. Okay, so this is the new classical consumption theory. And then I want you guys to go ahead and watch these 2 videos on behavioral economics. Okay, and then answer a few questions that I'm gonna post in the end of the class. Okay, answer a few questions about behavioral economics. And then compare and contrast behavioral economics, thinking whether or not the points and examples that Dr. Ariely gives in his videos, if they support the 4 assumptions behind the indifference curve and the budget line, or if they debunk those assumptions. Okay, so compare and contrast them. All right, so after you do that, we can talk about the post-Keynesian perspective. So post-Keynesian theory of consumption relies on 7 assumptions. Okay, the first one is procedural rationality, which we have already discussed. And procedural rationality means that consumers are not substantially rational, meaning that consumers are still rational, but we, due to our cognitive ability and other criteria when we are making choices, we choose the shortcuts so that we don't have to all the time think about the new information that came about in the economic system, the changes in our preferences. So we don't need to think about this all the time and revise our choices based off that. So we kind of find shortcuts so that we avoid spending too much cognitive energy in order to make our choices. Okay, so this speaks directly to rationality, meaning that the post-Keynesians do not believe that we're rational like new classical economists believe we're rational. The second principle is known independence. No independence means that the choices that we make depend on our social surroundings, right? So, for example, the clothes that we buy. If you're a student, you probably have a lot of sport clothing, a lot of comfortable clothing, um, because when you look at your group, the groups that you belong to, that's what you guys do, right? You want to be comfortable in class so you can pay attention. You also, a lot of you practice sports, right? So the social context really impact the kind of clothes you buy, right? If you compare, for example, about your wardrobe with a wardrobe of a CEO, you will see that there is a big difference. Or even if you compare here on campus, right, to how a professor dresses or versus a student. So whenever we are buying goods, consumption goods or services, we are signaling that we belong to certain groups. Okay, so another example of that is, as you saw in the video, someone who owns a Toyota Prius, right? So a lot of people who own a Toyota Prius, they want to indicate that they are concerned with the environment and that they belong to that group of people who are concerned with pollution and the environment, right? So this our social surrounding impacting our decisions for the post-Keynesians enter into the concept of non-independence. Then we have a third idea that is very related to this, which is the heredity. This means that our consumption patterns of the past really impact our current consumption patterns. So, for example, the detergent that we buy, right? I moved from Brazil, I used the same cloth detergent that my parents always used because smell is a very particular taste, right? And I just liked the way the clothes smelled from my parents' house. So I would never look at the price or try to adventure into new brands of clothing detergent. I just always use the same one, right? The same thing about cereal. I always buy the same cereal. I don't look at the price, right? So these are the examples of heredity. And so all these three principles, they are criticisms to the new classical perspective of rationality. Because remember, for them, rationality means that we're self-interested individuals that are always maximizing our utility given our budget constraints. So we're always consuming where marginal cost equal marginal benefit. Whereas here you can see from this perspective, consumers are making choices based on their preferences and not always they're really thinking about how to maximize their budget. Okay. Also, from the new classical perspective, rationality means that we are discrete individuals, that we are asocial, right? And both of the principles of non-independence and heredity, they really debunk this idea um, discrete individual, right? We're social individuals. Our current surroundings matter, and what we did in the past also matter today. Okay. Then we have the next principle of post-Keynesian theory is the satiable wants. Satiable wants means that people meet thresholds of goods that they are willing and able to buy, or we should say that they are willing to buy, because one of the arguments that post-Keynesian make is that people save, right? When we look on the average in the US, on average, Americans save about 35% of their income. So if people were unsatiable, they would never save. They would spend all of their income just wanting more and more goods and services. Okay, so that's the rationale from the post-Keynesian perspective, that actually we do meet thresholds, not only in terms of particular goods, right? You don't want 10 couches in your house. You probably want 1, 2, or 3, but not more than that. And so there is a limit of goods that we actually can buy. And here I have some drawings showing that, illustrating this idea of post-Keynesians, right? That more is not always better than less. Okay, so that's the post-Keynesian perspective.